Welcome back to Any Recapped. Today we will continue with the story of Braves of the Six Flowers. Let's jump right in. Deep in a forest, Adlet collapses from his injury. The other Braves search for him all day but stop when night falls. Hans is concerned about Flamy, but Mora tells him she is still alive since their marks in the shape of a flower still have all 6 peels. Meanwhile, Adlet is dreaming about his childhood. Back then, he didn't want to be a warrior and only wanted to live peacefully with his sister and his best friend. Sometime later, he completely changed his demeanor, wanting to become the strongest in the world so he can take back what was stolen from him. He found an old warrior called Atro and begged him to train him. Seeing how desperate he is, Atro became his master and taught him to smile in the face of despair. In the present, Adlet wakes up and finds out that Flamy dressed his wound. Even though she is almost certain he is the 7th Brave, she still isn't sure, so she helped him. The two of them light a fire and Adlet concludes there are 2 enemies. He thinks one of the Braves was among the 7 that gathered at the temple, while an 8th person snuck into the temple and activated the barrier, so he can frame Adlet as an impostor. When Flamy asks him why he wanted to become brave in the first place, Adlet tells her that when he was a child, a single friend visited his village. The fiend could talk and he came to speak to the people. The next morning, the fiend left and the village elder announced that he made a deal with him. In order for the villages to be left alive, they will have to move to the land of the demons, where they will be ruled by the demon god. The fiend told the elder that he has to rip the hearts out of everyone who opposes them and bring them to him as a sign of loyalty. Since Adlet's best friend and sister refused to go with the other, they were killed and Adlet was forced to run away. Now, Adlet doesn't want revenge but believes he is fighting for the sake of his loved ones. Hearing this story, Flamy recognizes the fiend as one of the 3 fiends who rule all the others. That fiend is also the one who came up with the idea of creating her. Flamy is jealous of Adlet because she doesn't have anything she believes in. She loved everyone and killed saints for her mother's and friends' sake. However, when she faced Chamot and returned to her village after losing to her, her mother tried to kill her. Flamy then realized her mother and the other fiends didn't love her, even though she loved them. Now she wants to kill the demon god as revenge on her mother for only pretending to love her. Adlet realizes the 2 of them are the same, both having been betrayed by their loved ones. Flamy gives Adlet a gunpowder container that if he throws it, she will know where he is. Before going back to the temple, she tells him she still thinks he is the impostor and will kill him the next time they meet. Back at the temple, Flamy tells the others that Adlet escaped. The next day, Mora tells everyone to split up and search for Adlet again. Mora pairs up with Flamy and Nashtanya with Goldov, while Hans stays at the temple and Chamot goes outside to explore and play around. Left alone with Goldov, Nashtanya tells him she will do her best to prove that Adlet isn't the impostor. Meanwhile, Adlet hides, seeing Mora and Flamy. He returns to the temple to investigate and get his weapons back but gets attacked by Hans. The 2 of them start fighting, but Hans has the upper hand, dodging all of Adlet's attacks and fighting unpredictably. Finally, Hans knocks Adlet's sword from his hand and captures him. Suddenly, Adlet uses a smoke bomb and manages to escape. When he manages to distance himself, he starts throwing all his weapons onto the floor. In the end, he launches his sword's blade and misses Hans on purpose, showing him that he won't attack him. He tries convincing Hans he isn't the impostor, but Hans smiles and reveals he is actually the fake. With his sword, he cuts off Adlet's head, killing him. However, it all turns out to be a hallucination caused by Hans cutting Adlet with his poisoned blade. Thinking that when someone is about to die, their faces show the truth, Hans accepts that Adlet isn't the 7th Brave. If Adlet was the 7th Brave, he would be confused when Hans said he is actually the 7th Brave. Hans shakes hands with Adlet, and they become friends, deciding to look for the impostor together. Somewhere else, Nashtanya and Goldov are looking for Adlet, and Nashtanya is worried about him. While Goldov is trying to convince her he is the impostor. Goldov thinks Nashtanya is acting differently than she usually would and is confused why she trusts Adlet more than him. Returning to the temple, Adlet starts thinking that a saint might be the culprit, after all since some of the Braves haven't shown all their abilities yet. Suddenly, Chamot appears. Hans tries convincing her that Adlet isn't the impostor, but Chamot is bored and just wants to go defeat the demon god. She decides to kill everyone until the barrier shuts down and vomits up a green liquid. When the liquid starts rising and turning into fiends, Chamot explains that she can summon everything she has ever eaten from her stomach. When the fiends attack Adlet and Hans, the 2 of them try fighting them, but they instantly regenerate. They decide to attack Chamot directly, but the fiends protect her, so Adlet comes up with another plan. Adlet blows his whistle and distracts the fiends so Hans can approach Chamot. Hans jumps into the air to attack her, but she vomits out another fiend. Hans blocks the fiend's attack and bounces off it, and Adlet kicks Hans back in Chamot's direction. Using the dull sides of his swords, Hans manages to knock Chamot out and restrain her. Hans and Adlet bring Chamot into the temple and ask her if she knew about the barrier before she met them, but she says she didn't. In the forest, having heard a commotion, Flamy and Mora run towards it. Outside the temple, Hans warns Adlet that he shouldn't make contact with Flamy since she suspects him. He knows Flamy doesn't trust anyone since he is similar to her. Nevertheless, Adlet tells Hans to watch Chamot and goes out to find Flamy. Deeper in the forest, Adlet throws the gunpowder container Flamy gave him, and Flamy notices it. Running away from Mora, Flamy finds Adlet and approaches him. Later, Mora joins Hans and Chamot in the temple and is angry at Hans for letting Adlet go. Adlet reveals to Flamy that he figured out the 7th Brave's plan. He thinks that the soldiers at the fortress in Gwenbeer lied about how the barrier is activated since none of the Braves knew about the barrier before that. The 7th Brave used them to spread lies about how the barrier was activated and then used fiends to bring everyone inside the temple. While the Braves were inside, the impostor somehow covered the forest with fog, making everyone think the barrier was activated. While everyone was trying to deactivate the barrier, the 7th Brave secretly activated it for real. Somewhere else, Nakshania tells Goldov she thinks Hans is suspicious because he called her a princess when they first met, even though we shouldn't know that. Meanwhile, Hans tells Mora and Chamot about Adlet's theory. Mora starts suspecting Hans since he was the first one who brought up that the temple was a locked room. Flamy is impressed by Adlet's theory but tells him that even the Saint of Fog would need at least 15 minutes to cover the entire forest in fog. To do something like that, one would need to set up a barrier that creates a fog, but since there is already a barrier set in the forest, it's impossible to set another one. In the temple, Mora still thinks Adlet is the impostor, and that he didn't kill Hans or Chamot because he is trying to make everyone else suspect and kill each other. Flamy still doesn't want to help Adlet because he can't guarantee he isn't the 7th. Adlet tells her that if she kills him and he isn't the impostor, she will be the next one who everyone will suspect. That makes Flamy stop in her tracks and wonder why Adlet is protecting her and was never suspicious of her. She wants to stay with him and get to know him because she is starting to feel she might be able to believe him. Adlet tells her that after his loved ones were killed, he tried to become a heartless warrior whose sole purpose would be killing fiends, but he soon realized he can't get rid of his emotions. Thinking Flamy is similar to him, he tells her he fell in love with her as soon as she met her and has always wanted to protect her. He wants to create a home for her once they kill the demon god, and Flamy is surprised at first, but still can't trust him. Shooting her gun at him, she concludes Adlet is her enemy. Hearing the gunshot, Mora tells Chamot to guard Hans while she heads toward the sound. Using her power of the Saint of Mountains, Mora powers up and calls out to everyone, saying Adlet critically wounded Hans and that he is the 7th Brave. Hearing this, Flamy intensifies her attack and chases Adlet through the forest. When Nakshitinya hears Mora's message, suddenly starts laughing maniacally. Growing incredibly angry, she runs off to find Adlet too. Adlet continues desperately running from Flamy and her explosives, but he's at a disadvantage. When the two of them stop, Flamy says Adlet's offer to protect her is a lie and believes that nobody will ever help her. Suddenly, Mora appears and attacks Adlet with incredibly strong punches, while he does his best to run away. Adlet throws a smoke bomb to stop Flamy and Mora, but stops and gets on his knees. Since he surrendered, Flamy stops Mora and doesn't let her attack him anymore. Suddenly, Adlet announces he will prove Flamy's innocence and ruin Mora's plan of blaming and killing her after killing him. He says he used a spray that detects fiends and sprayed it onto the altar where the barrier is activated. Since it didn't show anything that proves Flamy didn't touch it. Hearing all this, Flamy realizes Adlet really cares about her and was telling the truth the entire time. Mora prepares to kill Adlet, but Flamy stops her. She says she still hates Adlet because he made her believe him, even though she swore to never believe anyone again. She throws a smoke bomb, enabling her and Adlet to run away. Suddenly, Nakshitinya appears and attacks Adlet too. She thanks Adlet for experiencing all kinds of different things while she was with him, but announces that she will kill him. Flamy says Mora is lying about Adlet, but Nakshitinya doesn't care. She attacks Adlet by summoning countless blades while he and Flamy dodge. Goldov and Mora join the fight, and Flamy tells Adlet to run while she covers him. Telling her he will come back for her, he runs towards the temple. Adlet wants to return to the temple and find Hans so he can prove his innocence to Nakshitinya. Once he reaches the temple, Nakshitianya's blades suddenly attack him. She managed to catch up with him, and he desperately runs from her, barely dodging and blocking the blades. Finally, she manages to cut him and stop him in his tracks. Wounded, Adlet tells her she thought they were friends and that he didn't do anything wrong. Nakshitanya doesn't listen to him and pierces his hand with a needle, but he manages to kick her and run away again. Goldov arrives and attacks Adlet, knocking him to the ground. Just as Adlet planned, the two of them end up in the same place where they fought the fiends with Nakshitanya when they first got here. Suddenly, Chamot and Hans join them. Nakshitanya is surprised seeing Hans is unharmed and regrets attacking Adlet. Mora admits she lied but still doesn't give up on Adlet being the impostor. Lying on the ground, Adlet says he knows what the seventh brave did. He realized there is one way to spread the fog over the forest instantly. He thinks that the seventh brave kidnapped Rokka, the Saint of the Sun, and forced her to raise the temperature of the forest gradually over a long period of time. Adlet thinks the seventh's allies were only pretending to be soldiers and Lauren was one of them. Using fiends, the seventh brave lured Adlet inside the temple. Once he was inside, the seventh's allies killed Rokka, making the humid forest's temperature drop suddenly, creating fog. In the end, the seventh secretly approached the altar and activated the barrier in a way only he knows. To confirm the theory, Hans finds Rokka's corpse inside one of the dead fiends lying around. Hearing all this, everyone is forced to admit Adlet isn't the impostor. However, nobody knows who the impostor is, but everyone suspects Mora because of her extreme actions before. At that moment, Chamot reveals she found a large chest with 2 stone tablets. One of the tablets is the same as the one that was on the altar in the temple, and the other shows instructions on how to deactivate and reactivate the barrier. It says that to reactivate it, someone needs to remove the sword from the activation mechanism, insert it again, and break the tablet on the mechanism. Suddenly, Adlet remembers that Nakshitanya broke the tablet while they were trying to deactivate the barrier. Everyone realizes that Nakshitanya is the seventh brave. Goldov immediately protects her, but she says she didn't activate the barrier on purpose. When Adlet says Nakshitanya was the one who told him to go to the temple in the first place, she finally shows her true face and admits she is the impostor. Cheerfully, she explains that she wants to achieve real peace in the world. She wants a world where the demon god, fiends, and humans can live without fighting. In order to revive the demon god and convince him not to attack the humans anymore, she wants the braves to resign. She plans to sacrifice 500,000 humans to achieve her goals, and as soon as the other braves hear that, they all attack her together. However, Nakshitanya only smiles before dissolving into green goo and disappearing. Hearing her laugh in the distance, the braves run after it, but Adlet collapses from exhaustion. Flamy stays with him, and he loses consciousness. Waking up the next morning, Adlet sees Mora, who healed his wounds using medicinal herbs. Even though Nakshitanya broke the barrier and escaped, the braves are unharmed. Going outside, Adlet sees Goldov, who is depressed. When Adlet finds Flamy, she tells him she needs some time to process everything that happened. However, she tells him she gave up on fighting alone and decided to join them. Suddenly, a girl in cow-patterned clothes called Rolonia arrives, saying she is sorry for being late. She is the saint of blood, and to everyone's surprise, she reveals she has a flower mark, making her the seventh brave. At that moment, Doltum, the king of Wembir, arrives together with his royal guard.